So the cost of living is too high and Eskom is making it worse. That is the word from some Soweto residents here in Johannesburg. At least 60% of customers in the city are defaulting on their water and lights bills. eNCA's Heidi Giokos joins us now in studio. Heidi, I actually saw you do that interview and my jaw was on the floor. I know that we have a problem of defaulting payments here in Johannesburg, but I didn't realise that 60% of us are not paying our bills.
Yes, Sally, I also couldn't believe it. I actually triple asked. I said, are you sure it's 60% of customers in the city of Johannesburg defaulting on their water and electricity bills? This was before the interview. And that is indeed the case. It seems as though it's getting worse. COVID-19, of course, exacerbating the situation because you had more people at home, working from home. Their bills increased. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people's salaries were cut. And now you have a situation where people are just not prioritizing their water and electricity bills. What's compounded here is the fact that many cannot afford to pay their water and electricity bills, and they aren't prioritizing their water and electricity bills. So what the city is saying is that they would have people come to their offices and say, we can't afford this bill, you've overbilled us, you've overcharged us, there's no way we've used so much water and electricity. But then when they do further investigations, they find that they live a lifestyle perhaps beyond their means. And this is where the city's saying, you need to actually prioritize your water and electricity bill. We would not overcharge you, and if you feel as though we are overcharging you, let's look deeper into this. The city's saying that they're trying their very best to come to a payment agreement with consumers that are unable to pay their water and electricity bills. But just to point out that majority of the people that are not paying, that are defaulting on their accounts, they cannot afford it. The cost of living has increased. Almost everything you're paying almost double, triple. And the city's saying they understand this, but they need customers to be aware that if you do not pay, there's a ripple effect. The city's in a position where they actually buy water and electricity. So they buy it from Eskom, they buy it from Rand Water. And if they buy it at a certain amount, they then need to sell it to customers. If you aren't paying for it, it puts the city in a difficult position. Then we complain about the fact that there's no electricity, there's no water, there's aging infrastructure. So this all has a ripple effect, and it all comes down to not being able to afford it. So let's listen in.
The ever-rising cost of living in South Africa is a phenomenon we have gotten used to. It's something that is happening. It affects all property owners with the defaults that we're seeing. So it's something that we're going through. There's about 60% of our average monthly bills that are defaulting. So you're thinking with about 1.2 million accounts that we're distributing every month, 60% of those are defaulting. So it's a serious picture because the city needs that money in order to continue functioning, in order to continue servicing, bringing service delivery to the people. So in order for the city to function, it needs good financial state of affairs.
So that's the reality for the city. Let's listen to the reality for a lot of residents.
These people you see here, they've got 3 months now not having electricity. That box has died. You see that box? It's 32 years old. It has never been maintained by Eskom. So now Eskom comes again and say they tariff hikes for electricity. What happened now, you see the guy here, this house burnt yesterday. The guy, they don't have electricity, lit a candle, and then he went to sleep and then unfortunately burnt to death. But this is the second incident that has happened. The very same street here, an old man got burned again. Unfortunately, the community were alerted and then they saved him. Do you understand? It's because of electricity. You know, we are in a fourth industrial revolution whereby we need only electricity to survive. Do you understand? But Eskom is not coming on board.
We are expected to pay over 500 rands, of which we cannot afford. Look at the people who are around here. There are so many, they are unemployed. They cannot afford. As I am, I'm very sick. I don't have electricity at the moment. My body is so cold. Our government is failing us. We voted for nonsense. This is really nonsense. Eskom is playing us games together with the government.
I mean, the sad reality is that many people cannot afford to pay, as we heard there. And then, of course, there's another section of society that doesn't want to pay. But these are people in pain. These are people who would pay if they could, but they're unemployed and they cannot. And what strikes me is that you said that it's getting worse, that 60%, but surely it's going to get even worse still, because we know that from July, the municipalities are putting up the price of electricity, passing on the costs that they've got from Eskom after nurses approved the increase. So it's just going to get worse, isn't it, Heidi?
It is, Sally. It is going to get worse. We were even told by the city that they are expecting things to only get worse, because we do know that the electricity price is going to increase by 9.61%. That's been approved by NERSA, despite the fact that Eskom actually asked for a 20% tariff increase. So it's a worrying picture. And just today, being in Soweto with residents, many are saying, but Soweto does not pay for the electricity. A lot of the residents actually do pay, and they've indicated that they cannot afford to pay more than 500 Rand. Majority of them are pensioners. They're living off the social grants. They don't have capacity to pay more than 500 Rand. If you're living with one person, how can you pay 1,000 Rand? There was one elderly man that actually said to us, he's expected to pay 1,200 Rand for a small house. He lives by himself, and he says, if I don't pay, they cut me off. He says, I cannot deal with this anymore. I just cannot afford this. But if you don't pay, you don't have electricity and water. So what do? You're forced to pay. And then they find themselves in very difficult positions where they're barely surviving. So the situation is just compounded by a number of factors. And of course, it just seems as though it's getting worse and worse.
Yeah, and the city is in danger of losing more customers as they default if the payments go just simply too high. It is a really tough and tricky situation. Thank you very much, Heidi Giokos.